Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming out and joining us on this snowy winter night. Good to have you with us. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to pick up the agenda that's in the corner so you can track along with us, although it's not too complicated. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes of the Supervisors meeting of January 5th, 2015?
No, although I don't remember seeing them. They're in the Dropbox, so I guess can that wait till the next meeting? Okay.
Okay, we'll postpone voting on the minutes. Who is presenting the police report?
We're not doing that.
Not doing it all. Okay. All right, we're not doing the police report. We're buzzing right through here. Manager's report, please.
Hey.
I wanted to announce that the sidewalk project that we're working on, which is installing sidewalks along part of Old Baltimore Pike into the borough, and that's over towards New Garden Township. There's a portion of the sidewalks going in on West Cypress Street from Kennett Borough to New Garden Township to the intersection of Scarlet Road. And then there's a section of sidewalk going in on McFarland Road to Rosedale Road and then Rosedale into the borough. So that project is moving along. We received an $850,000 grant for that project, and we anticipate construction in the spring of 2016. The regional police study that we've been working on for quite some time now, we did meet right before Christmas and with all the other participating townships. We gathered everybody's concerns with the regional police study, and now we're just waiting to get some more information before we decide if we're moving forward or not. And we are also working on an emergency service study within the region. There's several townships that have come together, and we're going to work with the Department of Community and Economic Development to do a study which will be free to the townships, and it will determine what the emergency services needs are for the townships, such as ambulance, fire company, what fire equipment or apparatus they need, and we're all working together to get that study started. That's all I have.
Thank you. And you have the police summary as well?
Is Albert back there? I will read it. I will read his study. Oh, do you already have it printed? I was going to pull it out.
It was in the mix of stuff.
Oh. During the month of December, the police activity in the township went down to 211 requests for police service. Residential house burglaries increased to 3, bringing the total to 18 for 2014, a low number for a township our size. Home alarms also decreased to 17. I believe he's talking about false alarms. This is also a low number for the township. Usually police activity increases with the holiday season. This is reflected in the traffic by 21 accidents. This is the highest number in the last 6 months. Some of the accidents were caused by bad weather. 2 drug arrests occurred during traffic stops. Finally, the police and road department, along with the township engineer, attended a meeting with PennDOT concerning improvements at the entrance at Kendall. Since the Kendall entrance is on a state highway, it requires a PennDOT permit. PennDOT engineers decided the improvements would require a construction permit, but upgrades to the signal were considered maintenance and would not require a new permit. And also, the maintenance garage has kept a lot of the equipment from other traffic signals, so we're going to be able to replace some of that equipment with other equipment that we have. And then they will also have to change the signal heads to improve the intersection.
Excuse me for interrupting. Can you tell us what is a signal head?
The red, yellow, green.
That which flashes or expresses a color.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, that takes us to old business. Would you like to introduce ordinance 221 for us?
Sure.
God, don't read the whole thing, please.
This ordinance is on our website. This is an ordinance which will be amending a previous ordinance, 197. It will revise the retirement community 2 use to require an established and reputable community management company to manage an RC2 use, to require a documented combined household income at or below 60% of the area median income for the Philadelphia metropolitan statistical area, providing for a minimum gross tract area to be 6 acres, a 45-foot maximum building height in the commercial district. This will amend the purpose of the commercial district to include provisions for age-restricted homes in a pedestrian-oriented setting, revising the use regulations of the R4, V1, V2, LI, and BP districts relative to RC2 use. So this ordinance will permit a developer to construct an age and income restricted community in the C district, the commercial district in the township.
Thank you. Before we discuss it, may we have the motion moved?
So moved.
And I'll second it. All right, is there any discussion on this?
Probably a fair amount. I mean, this has been around for us a bit. And I guess one of my questions is, it says established and reputable. Can council speak to who determines that? Do the board of supervisors get to determine that?
Well, I think the original language was even a little bit more hazy than that. At one time, it either said, or we were considering having it say, non-profit corporation to manage, but it was deemed that there might be some very good for-profit management companies that could manage a retirement community, and therefore changed it to the current language. Established and reputable, I think, will be at the discretion of the township. It's possible that if an RC application comes in and the township asks the applicant who will be managing it, and they give us a name, that it would be the township's job to do some due diligence on that proposed manager and make sure that they're established, that they have experience in the area, and that the township feels comfortable with it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Are there comments from those in the audience? Yes.
Hi, Jim Shevatuski, representing the Planning Commission.
Third microphone. There it is.
We don't hear without microphones up here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Representing the Planning Commission, you have received our minutes from the January meeting of the Planning Commission, in which we made a motion recommending that the supervisors not adopt the amendment that's being proposed on the ordinance. And allow me to identify the reasons. The principal concern is actually the inclusion of this retirement community 2 in the commercial district. The Planning Commission, back in the original ordinance 197, which was September 2011, our intent was to provide basically a residential use and keep that use within a residential area. Now, at that time, we did include business park.
And limited industrial.
And limited industrial. The intent was, actually, the limited industrial wasn't really recommended by the Planning Commission at that time. It was actually an addition by the board. The intent was to have a campus-like environment in within these communities, which the Planning Commission believes the inclusion in the commercial zoning district would not offer. The intent of a commercial district, as you know from the zoning, is to provide a range of commercial uses, particularly those involving retail trade of goods and services. And in addition, to have uses that would complement the commercial establishments and strengthen the economic base of the township. So we believe the limited amount of commercial zoning that we do have that's available, our belief is we should retain that zoning for commercial use and not use it as I'm using the term residential use for these retirement communities. And it's sort of linked with the second point, and it goes somewhat to what Richard was bringing up. In the Ordinance 197, we were very specific with the wording that the retirement community would be managed by a non-profit agency. This was primarily intended to enable management by an organization that would be guided by altruistic reasons, basically for the benefit of the community. At the time, an organization such as the Luther Foundation, which operates the Luther House Residence, was the model of such an agency, and it remains an example today. Now, as David, as you mentioned, we do understand the opinion that the inclusion of the statement of a 501c3 nonprofit agency may not be supportable. And back in, November, December, October, when the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors were going back and forth on the wording, while we did not provide you a definition or consideration of an alternate definition, we basically do not agree with the definition used in the proposed ordinance that says a community that is developed and managed by an established and reputable community management company. Primarily because the term established and reputable requires additional definition. It is too broad, too vague, and more importantly, too subjective. And if you would, the term subjective implies that we're leaving it up to the board to then make that definition at the time the application is in front of us. And we were looking for something that would be more defined. I'm sorry, I'm trying to go to my second page. Can't hold the mic and do two things. The second major issue that we have with this proposed amendment is the tract size. We believe the minimum should be 10 acres and stop there. Our intent with the 10 acres was to enable a campus-like setting with green space and allow an openness between the buildings that would provide a walkable, livable environment. The 10-acre size was also going to enable a perimeter open space to minimize the intrusion on the adjoining properties and also provide room for ancillary services such as gardens and so forth. We believe that the 6-acre minimum would not provide that. Also, the campus setting that we envision with a 10-acre minimum would also have the facilities and the infrastructure to enhance the pedestrian linkage through the use of sidewalks. Therefore, we do not believe that the inclusion of a definition of pedestrian-oriented setting is required within the ordinance. And if such a definition is to be included, we would ask that the definition not include a tract size and simply refer to the pedestrian linkage, because it doesn't matter how big the tract is. So our motion that we made at the PC, which was presented to you, was basically not adopt the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for the presentation. Can you refresh me on this? Am I not correct that this ordinance was sent to the county for county review?
I'm going to answer yes. It was actually sent back, Lisa, in October?
Well, then this current version was sent recently.
Recently, right. So the county had also received a, I guess you'd call it a draft review of the ordinance that we were proposing. And remember, one of the comments that they had also made was they had also questioned that definition of the reputable firm for the same reason.
The county did not receive the planning commission's draft because the supervisors did not authorize that to be sent to them. They received the initial draft of the ordinance that was created, and then they received this ordinance.
And is Jim correct about the comments on this ordinance?
I will have to look it up and see.
On the first, I guess you'd have to call it a draft. PC version.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Does anybody else want to speak to this ordinance?
Hi, I'm Chris Burkett. I had a question about whether or not these uses proposed would be conditional use in any of the zoning districts that they're proposed in, or whether they would be by right.
It would be by conditional use.
Yeah, I'm just double checking that. I'm almost certain that wherever an RC2 use is permitted, it is permitted by conditional use. Is that correct, Tom?
It's by right.
Oh, use is permitted by right. In the R4, in the V1, correct, it's permitted by right. In the
I
V2,
thought one was...
am I
No.
looking at the, oh, they're all by right, okay. Then you can better answer the question than I can. I may be looking at the wrong, not the most recent version.
Just for the residents who are here to know, this is a very long and complicated and linked ordinance because it is making amendments to numerous other ordinances, so there are references all over, and hence the thickness of the packet and the confusion in finding all of the connectors. Tom, do you have any recollection on that?
Yeah. They're all by right. I do have the right version.
Hi, Tom Comita, town planner and landscape architect from Westchester, PA. So this is probably the third incarnation of the ordinance since last summer. There was a short version, number one, a second version which the Planning Commission asked me to assist with, which as Jim P12 was mentioning, was 10-acre threshold. At that time, did not contemplate the C district. And for all the districts where it was contemplated, V1, R4, BP, we thought on balance that it should be a use by right. In the third version, the one before the board tonight, all of the by right aspects are carried through, and the new change is the ability in C on 6 acres with the pedestrian-oriented setting to have it by right as well. As you mentioned, Scott, the other changes include the removal in many places of the boarding house provisions, because there were no specific density thresholds in those. So to just supplement what Lisa said at the outset, we kept the campus-oriented setting for the 10 acres, but reduced to 6 acres in the C district for pedestrian oriented. But all the while kept that use as a permitted use and not as a conditional use.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to say, though, that I agree with that approach. I think that with an ordinance like this, if you make everything a conditional use, there's an extreme risk on the part of any developer applicant who comes before you. He's looking to spend a considerable amount of money, and if there's a conditional use on top of the land development approval, I think it diminishes the appetite of many potential developers to come in and try and get an approval. The second comment I wanted to make was relative to the appendices that have design guidelines in them. I think the design guidelines are way too broad and not specific enough. As you mentioned, the ordinance is confusing with multiple references in it. It makes someone who's trying to use this ordinance to actually design a project, it's very difficult to track what's going on, and the design guidelines that are in the appendices make very broad and esoteric statements about the design should promote a feeling or a sense, and it's very difficult to quantify that in a design. And I think you may want to take some additional time to tighten that up a little bit so that it's a lot more performance oriented on the part of the developer applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And the gentleman that has the microphone, yes.
My name is Art Knackle. I'm involved in the board of directors of a Luther Foundation that was mentioned earlier. Just for the audience, we built 4 buildings on 16 acres of land, and we have a campus setting. Those of you who have not been out there, take a look at what was built, and we built it and operate it as a nonprofit.
Thank you. I've been there, and I have friends and clients who live there, and it's very well received, and it's a very lovely facility. It's been there for 15, 20 years?
We built
13 or
13 years.
Yes.
Yeah. You were able to do that out there when the borough was trying to do one in the borough, which never got off the ground.
Right. Yes.
Does anybody else want to add to the discussion?
I guess that speaks just based on the size, that if something is 80 units and 6 acres, the question is how self-sustaining will it be? I mean, that's the challenge with any development, to make sure it's self-sustaining.
Mm-hmm.
We found we had to have at least two buildings in order to make it self-sustaining.
How many units in a building?
We have 68 units in each building, so you need about 100 units minimum, from our experience, to make it worthwhile.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Eden Roberts from Delaware Valley Development Company, and certainly what's going on at Luther House is admirable. As it relates to this ordinance, I think that the market can dictate how many units can be built on this site and what it can sustain. I think that's something that will just kind of work itself, and I can speak that we are confident that less than 80 units on 6 acres would have no problem functioning and being operational and supporting its debt in a really positive community. For what that's worth.
Do you have examples of? Well, excuse me. Hi. Before you give up the microphone, do you have examples of those?
Examples of what?
Of where there's, let's say, 80 units, or some smaller number than 60, between 68 and 80 in one where it's self-sustaining?
Yeah, we have so we do primarily affordable housing. We have one affordable elderly complex in Elverston, Pennsylvania, that I think is around 75 units. It's called Hopewell Manor, and we haven't. I mean, it's a function of the market, and I think that Kennett is is an aging community. You know, there's not a lot of influx of younger people, and as such, you know, there's not a whole lot of rental nearby for anybody, but especially for elderly units. I think Luther House is elderly, right?
Yes, 62.
Yeah. So there's not. I mean, I'm sure you guys know there's not a whole lot around this area. So I think that you know, I would not anticipate there would be any problems whatsoever. Creating a community, leasing up the community, continuing on a really, you know, positive path as it moves forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, John?
I'm John Hedrick, Kennett Township. I think one of the issues raised here earlier to reserve the commercial zoned areas in the township for commercial activities, which, as was stated, this is more a residential thing. I just wonder if you could show on the zoning map the commercial districts where this type of thing might fit. And I think it will make it clear that we don't have much commercial land available. And if we assign a big parcel, whether it be 6 acres or 10 acres, to a residential use, we're going to really constrain future commercial uses. And another thing about the commercial, when you look at the zoning map, you'll see that the commercial is set in areas which are naturally meet the kind of retail, other business activities. Along heavily traveled road, typically, close to the borough often. Many of our commercial areas are completely built out. If we start building apartments or whatever, however you want to characterize this, in these commercial districts, we're going to end up really with a shortage of commercial land in the township. Thanks.
Thank you.
Let me hold it up.
So here's the commercial district right here, which is on East Cypress and Miller's Hill. There's another area of commercial right along Baltimore Pike. And then the other area of commercial is on over towards New Garden Township at West Baltimore Pike and West Cypress Street. You want to see that?
Thank you, Lisa. Anybody else want to weigh in?
So let me point out that because this is a zoning ordinance amendment, this is in fact a public hearing. And I know you've opened it up to public comment, but I would like, for the record, to note that this is a public hearing that is required to be held by the supervisors prior to enactment. So the public should treat it as such and feel free to continue to comment on the proposed ordinance.
Thank you. If there's not for, yes, John.
That last comment is new. Does that mean that certain individuals should register as parties?
Yeah.
No.
No?
No.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, shall we vote?
Louis, you got one.
Sorry, Lou, that's up.
I'd just like to say, I'm Lou Wonderly, and I've been associated with Luther House for the past 15 years. And I'd like to commend the board for taking this particular action, because we've been struggling to find appropriate location in the Kennett Square area for affordable senior housing for the past 15 years. And this would go a long way towards satisfying our need if we could find the appropriate piece of land. So thank you very much for your efforts on this.
Thank you, Lou, for those comments. If there, yes.
I was going to address it to you. I'm Beth Thomas, and I wanted to know, because you are at Luther House and the areas that they are stating that it would be a good fit to put those type of developments in, as he was saying, it's in the commercial district, it's very heavily commercial. Do you feel that that type of development would really fit in that type of setting?
Well, I can just say from experience at Jennersville, where we bought 16 acres of land 20 years ago, the commercial area has developed around us, and in that time, a commercial mall has been put in, there's banks, and the hospital has expanded, so it does fit very well into a commercial setting. Our residents actually can almost walk to the shopping centers and to the banks and churches that are out there. So I think does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, I think the area that they're talking about is not necessarily where the shops and stores are, though, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, some are.
There's the medical center right nearby.
Right.
The new library we hear is going in right there. There are a few shops around there, but it's not a highly populated shopping area.
Right.
But there are some.
So that's why I was
around.
asking if you felt
And then
that
on
it
the
would
other
really
side
fit.
It's a real hand-in-glove situation for our residents particularly, so.
Yeah, if you're so familiar with it.
And on the other side of the township, if they were to build one in that commercial area, it is close to the New Garden Shopping Center.
Okay.
Yes, Tom?
I just would like to clarify one point. When the third version and the current version of this ordinance was considered, the solicitor and I were talking about this very point at the very outset. And we said, let's take a look at all the districts and all the uses and carefully analyze them. In the C1 district today, just today, yesterday, a use permitted by right does include single-family detached dwelling. So that's already allowed. And then we're going to take out boarding house, but until the board takes action on this ordinance, boarding house is still in, as is a family daycare home, and that is an accessory use by special exception. And then multifamily dwellings are allowed, but it has to be in conjunction with planned commercial development. So when we talk just generally about this, had there been no reference to residential, and there are several, it would have given us pause. But because the commercial district already allows those uses, as well as many other mixed uses, we didn't think we were adding a new kind of alien use because of what the district already allowed. If we had discovered that it would, perhaps we wouldn't have approached it in the same way. But because of the existing district and what it allows, we proceeded in that way.
Good. Very helpful. Thank you, Tom. Any others? Seeing no hands, hearing no voices, shall we vote?
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 2 to nothing. Okay. Next item on the agenda is Ordinance 229, Reduction of Planning Commission. You want to introduce that one, please?
This ordinance has been created to reduce the number of members of the Planning Commission from 9 to 7. which then this ordinance repeals all inconsistent ordinances or parts thereof. Currently, our planning commission has always been 9. As of January 5th, the supervisors did not reappoint 2 members, so it is now down to 7. This ordinance will make it official that there will only be 7 members on the planning commission.
May we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second. Shall we discuss it?
Yes. Yes. There.
Microphone coming up for you. Father Bill.
Okay, so I'm one of the older guys around, so...
I say that with respect. I look up to you.
Am I taller than you?
Only one sitting down.
Oh, okay, well, anyway. I spoke to Lisa the other day about approving this ordinance, and let me just give the audience a little background. 6 or 7 years ago, when something like this came up, there was a presentation of the ordinance, sometimes in detail, sometimes not in detail. And the supervisors at that time would give a brief explanation of what was in the ordinance, or the resolution, or whatever it was. And the audience really didn't understand a lot of the details. And the next thing that happened was the motion was made, it was seconded, discussion was minimal because no one in the audience knew what was going on, and it got passed. Okay, a few less years, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, a recommendation was made to the former Board of Supervisors. And that rule was this. Any proposed ordinance or resolution should be presented, discussed, explained in detail, and then postponed for 1 month. Put it on the website, give everybody a chance to look over the details of this, get their comments, and the Board of Supervisors is not allowed to act on it until the following month, so that everybody has a chance to look at this and make their comments and be at the next meeting to make those comments. So that's exactly what I think the rule, the general rule, has been, and I hope it continues, because this is not a simple thing. There are a lot of Planning Commission members here tonight who object to that. I think some of them are going to make some comments again, but I'm asking that the Board of Supervisors postpone the adoption of this ordinance until the next official meeting a month from now.
Thank you.
And so I think there'll be other people who want to say something.
In the back. Yes, Jim.
Jim Guthrie, Kennett Township. The proposal to reduce the number of members on the Planning Commission to 7 from 9 is not good for Kennett Township. It will make the township less responsive, less transparent, and less representative. The township has always tried to maintain a diverse representation on the Planning Commission. We have strived to maintain geographic balance so that all areas of the township have representation. We have sought members with diverse educational backgrounds and career choices in order to bring specialized talent to the Commission. We have been aware of the importance of demographic diversity, looking at age and gender, and whether prospective members may have school-aged children. We have searched for members with unique interests, individuals who have connections with other community organizations to enhance the flow of information to the township. We've attempted to balance the Planning Commission between members who are long-term residents and residents who may have located here only recently. When we combine all of these factors, Kennett Township has fielded some extraordinary and talented individuals over the years. The Kennett Township Planning Commission has been in the forefront in creating some of the most innovative and pioneering ordinances in Chester County. We were the first with cluster development at Southridge. Our environmental and natural feature protection ordinances have served as models for numerous other municipalities. Recently, we have enacted an alternative energy ordinance, which also was picked up by other municipalities in the area. The Planning Commission, in conjunction with the Environmental Advisory Council, was the first to do a woodland classification study and incorporate it into the zoning ordinance. I think we actually won an award on that. When the county updated stormwater requirements, our provisions were substantially ahead of theirs, and we had to make very few changes. We did all of this with 9 dedicated members, and we were not slowed down when any one member was unable to make a meeting. We have a committee system of 3 members per unit, per committee, in which we can look at things in depth without worrying about sunshine law, but to discuss it in public meeting. The 2 members who were dismissed by not being reappointed a couple of days before Christmas illustrate the point. Matt Szabo represents the area of McFarland Road and Waste Lane, where a lot of development has been occurring recently. We now do not have a member from that area. Matt was one of our younger members with school-aged children, affording him a perspective on education and recreation. Matt, by education, holds a PhD in environmental engineering and has chosen that field as a career. He brought an environmental knowledge and concern that will be irreplaceable. He also served as our only liaison with the Environmental Advisory Council. Matt played a huge role in crafting the riparian buffer, the woodland ordinances, and stormwater control ordinances. He was always there to point out when we weren't doing tree protection standards properly. Bob Listerman, the other member who will not be with us, represented the southwest portion of the township in the Beckers Bridge and Chandler Mill Bridge area. His background is in accounting, business, and security. He may be relatively recent arrival in the township, but he has developed an incredible connections through his memberships with the Senior Center, which I believe he's now on the board, the Red Clay Valley Association, and the Rotary. He also served on the county Route 1 corridor study. Bob is enthusiastic, upbeat, and positive. We shouldn't discourage members like this. We are not strengthened by reducing the Planning Commission to 7. We are weakened. It makes our township less inclusive and less representative. I was particularly disappointed and disheartened that the proposal was created without discussion or consultation with the Planning Commission, its chairman, or any of its members. So why are we doing this?
Just so the record is clear, nobody's been dismissed. And in fact, this is not about individuals. Both of whom you mentioned were well received and are highly respected, and they continue on other important committees on behalf of the township. So it's not about individuals. And it's not a personal matter. Does anybody else want to add to the discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Richard Gaw, Chester County Press. For those of us who are not... Sure. Oh, thank you. Yeah, Richard Gaw, Chester County Press. Mr. Chairman, for those of us who were not able to attend the January 5th meeting, could you provide us with a brief explanation as to why Mr. Szabo and Mr. Listerman were not reappointed to this post, and why the need to overall just go ahead and reduce the Planning Commission number from 7 to 9. From 9 to 7, excuse me.
The ordinance provides for anywhere from 5 to 9. This was a middle ground. In the past, I can't speak with the depth of history that Brother Bill Houghton, I call him Father Bill Houghton,
That's okay.
spoke for the history of the township on how it functioned. But I know in my experience, and before that, the Board of Supervisors would routinely pass to the Planning Commission review of everything, all sorts of different things. And the process took a little time, and maybe in some ways it helped, and maybe in other ways it didn't help. It dragged things out, and in some cases for a long period of time. Some things got lost for a year before they finally came back surfacing to be addressed by the board. It's important to note that responsibility was never defined or mandated or directed by the state statute that creates a planning commission. It was, for whatever reason that the previous boards did it, it was done by the previous boards for their convenience. For the last couple of years, it's been clear, I believe, that was not the way this board was proceeding, that the things that the Planning Commission was to address were to be addressed by the Planning Commission. The things that the Board of Supervisors were to address would be addressed by the Board of Supervisors. And we don't need to overlap the two and change the areas of responsibility, which is what, in my view, was happening. And as a consequence, because there is not going to be an expectation that the normal business of the Board of Supervisors was going to be previewed, pre-digested, reviewed, or otherwise regurgitated by the Planning Commission, you don't need as many people doing the work. So the goal is to focus down on what needs to be done and how it's going to be done, which is Planning Commission business. And so it seemed like the simplest and most direct way to do it would be to reduce the number serving. There were two that were members that were up for renewal, or reappointment, I should say. And so by not reappointing them, that automatically took it back to 7 from the 9. But in order to make it so there wasn't a vacancy, or to create otherwise confusion, we thought it would be appropriate to amend our ordinance from 9 to 7. Hence the motion that is currently on the table for a vote tonight.
Did Mr. Sabo and Mr. Listerman...
Excuse me a second, there's no back.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did Mr. Sabo and Mr. Listerman approve and go willingly, or were they reluctant in response to hearing about this?
Well, Mr. Listerman, I'm not going to speak for either one of them. I know that Mr. Sabo continues to be the chairman of the the EAC. Advisory Committee, thank you, where he has served long and faithfully and very effectively. And I know that Bob Listerman has become actively involved in a new committee that is very important, and he seems to be very enthusiastic about it. So you'd have to ask them as to whether they're happy about it or not. My guess is that that Matt is not happy, but Matt's had his hand up after you, so I imagine we'll hear about that in a minute.
Thank you.
Your turn, Matt.
Thank you. I'm not going to say anything about being happy or not happy. It's not really relevant. And nothing I'm going to say has anything to do with my place on the Planning Commission. I was happy to serve. I was honored to serve. My time's up, and I'm not saying anything to get back onto the Planning Commission. But first I want to thank Jim. Thank you, Jim, for the tribute. I didn't know you cared so much. Bill Houghton and I were talking last week, because I believe it or not, Bill and I used to serve together on the Planning Commission, which means I've been around a while too. And we were talking just about our history with the township. I'll pass on something for you to consider. You can do with it what you will. I've been around 15 years with the EAC and the Planning Commission. I've seen a lot of decisions made in the township, and most of them have been very good. A couple of them have been not so good. Sometimes by the Planning Commission, sometimes by the board, sometimes by other groups. The ones that weren't so good were generally made by a couple of people talking together, coming to a decision, maybe bringing in one or two confidants, and sort of springing something on the township as a whole. Those were the decisions, particularly when they were made by the board, that created the most animosity, the most distrust in the government, and created the most problems in terms of people moving forward. And it was always unnecessary. We had a great organizational meeting a few weeks ago. You led it, Scudder, you know. There were dozens of people here representing many, probably well over 100 people very involved in township government, a variety of perspectives, and all those people are always willing to talk. And the Planning Commission is certainly always willing to talk, and meet with the board, and certainly would have been, if we had met with the board on this issue before, we would have been willing to meet and discuss it again, and the decision is always yours. People just like to be talked to and have a chance to get their input in before that decision gets made. And that would be my advice to you in all manner of decisions like this in the future, is do not hesitate to go forward to these committees, multiple committees if possible, get their input, start a discussion, and get that before things get sort of sprung on us and surprise us at the end of the year. That's it.
Matt, I appreciate your comments, and I certainly agree with you, and I certainly have tried to follow that advice even before you gave it to me. And the perfect example of that would be when I asked several committees for comments. The Safety Committee was one, and the LCAC was the other, with regard to certain questions that related to the Chandlier Mill Bridge, which we'll be talking about shortly. So I fully understand what you're suggesting and agree with it in principle. I don't agree that things should be passed on to other committees and to be resolved. And that's the reason why we have Board of Supervisor meetings, and why I've been particularly concerned not to put any restrictions on anybody to be able to speak out. I mean, there are many townships and other municipalities where you get to raise your question, you get one question that you can comment on, and you do it before the meeting begins. And you get a minute or two to be able to speak, and that's the totality of the public input. That is not the case here. This meeting is always open, and anybody that wants to talk, they are given the opportunity to talk. And they get to repeat themselves and speak about, if somebody says something and they want to have a rejoinder, they get the opportunity to do it. It's just like we're sitting around the dining room table and we're all talking about whether we're going to paint the living room blue or green. So my view is that that's where the decisions should be made, that's where the decisions should be heard, And that's where we all should have an opportunity to put in our words of wisdom. So I'm taking this a slightly different from what your comments were, but that's the way this board has been functioning for the last 2 years. Are there any other questions, or not questions, any other comments that anybody wants to bring up on the subject? Yes, ma'am.
First off, I'd say I agree with this gentleman that I think we should wait to vote on this and get more input. And I was not aware of it until I went to the Planning Commission work session that the board was even considering reducing the Planning Commission from 9 to 7. And as a member of the community, I think that it should have been more publicly advertised so we knew about it. And there's supposed to be more transparency, and we didn't see anything to that. And as far as reducing it from 9 to 7, I think we should leave it at 9 so that we have all the representation. If you have a problem, you said, about things getting lost and so forth, I guess there's a communication problem. Maybe there should be another set of an agenda that if you are discussing something, there's a deadline that you need to have something back to us so something doesn't get lost. So I think there's some breakdown there that can be fixed with the 9 members. But you're saying that's kind of the reasoning why is because things are discussed too much or we don't get a response. I'd rather have those 9 members discussing because they're representing me and everybody else in the community.
Well, the reality is they don't represent you. They are appointed with very specific charges of responsibility. This Board of Supervisors represents you.
I don't think so, because I think you already have an agenda when you're coming in here, because if you didn't, you would have posted that you were talking about this ahead of time, that this was up for discussion, not tonight with this ordinance.
Thank you. Bill?
Maybe I could be considered senior Bill Houghton rather than elderly or pop or what. Anyway, 2 things. I went over a Chester County directory 3 or 4 days ago to look at planning commissions and supervisors and numbers of people on the boards and committees. And what I found was, I found 40 that I could identify the planning commissions. 17 were 5 members, and they were basically small townships that had 5 members on their planning commission. It's always an odd number, so there's no ties and that kind of thing. The next number was 17. There were 17 that had 7. I want to also make you understand that there were 6, or over 10%, had 9 members. 9 members on their planning commission. They were generally the more populous townships, but generally that's what they had. There were six townships, not boroughs, because they're councils. 6 townships with 9 members on their planning commission. So it's not an unusual feature at all. What I'd like you to do, and you've been urged to do this, is postpone this so that people can listen to it and you can talk to more of the Board of Supervisors and other people about it. And consider tonight, because you've given out an ordinance, a proposed detailed ordinance, consider this the proposal, because that's what it is. It wasn't proposed officially before that time. This is the proposal, and we should have 1 month to consider. You should consider comments and suggestions and vote on it at next official meeting. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments?
Joe Jester, Kennett resident. You mentioned that the current ordinance is somewhere between 5 and 9. Looking at the ordinance on the website, it actually says that it was 9 and it was enacted in 1976.
If I may, Scudder meant the municipality's planning code requires 5, no less than 5, no more than 9.
Okay.
That's what he was referring to, not any existing ordinance.
Well, in any case, the existing ordinance for having 9 members has been, was adopted in 1976. That's been working, I would say, fairly well for 39 years. I'm just not sure why, I mean, you've provided an example as to why we need to change that. Because I do agree that the 9-member board seems to make a lot of sense. The way that it's made up with 3 members into 3 subcommittees makes a lot of sense. Dropping it to 7, you will not have that. And also in the new ordinance, there's a mention that this was done in for health, safety, and welfare issues. Has something like that occurred where that's driving this to occur?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that question. I explained what was driving it. There was nothing about health, safety, or welfare.
Let me clarify. In the ordinance, when the Board of Supervisors authorizes that an ordinance be drafted, it is understood that that ordinance is being suggested by the board, no matter what it is, in the best interest of the health, safety, and welfare of the residents, which it is the board's province to ensure. In this case, this board felt, in its opinion, that a 7-member planning commission is a better alternative based on what workload it will have and what it will be asked to do going forward than a 9-member board, and therefore in any resolution or ordinance we add language saying that it's in the best interest of the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of Kennett Township, even though a number or many of the residents may disagree with it, as we've heard tonight, that it's more of a policy statement than anything else.
So could I ask council, so right now there are 7 appointed members.
Correct.
Is there any impact on the functioning of the planning commission if we adopt the ordinance now or talk about it for another month?
No, there's not.
Okay. So can we move to table it? Thank you. That was the word I was looking for until the next meeting, where we can have greater input from the public about this particular ordinance. It really isn't about a person. It is about the workload and the change in the way the township's been running for the last couple of years.
Well, that's the board's prerogative. There's a motion on the floor, and there's a second. We're in discussion. If a member makes a motion to table it, it will go onto the table and be brought off of the table at the next public meeting, which is February 4th.
Okay.
It'll be re-advertised.
And we don't have a 3rd member here tonight to sort of probably break our tie, I'm guessing. So, since it doesn't impact the current functioning of the planning commission, what I'd like to do is, I guess I offer a motion to table it to be considered for a vote at the next full meeting of the Board of Supervisors. But I may not hear a second, so I don't know then what we do.
The audience will second it.
I'm sorry?
That's what the audience will.
Let them vote.
Have the planning commission second.
We can just wait a month and get more input.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All right.
Motion, lost table.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll wait a month, we'll get more input, and then we'll make a decision based on what we see as the workload by the PC and the other committees within the township. So thank you all for your...
I guess we ought to vote. I mean, when I say it's tabled, I mean, if there's a motion and a second by the 2 people that are here, I assume, why don't you take an official vote to table, and we'll...
Yes, all in favor?
Aye.
As written, aye. Okay. That gets us to ordinance 230, 4-way stops.
This is an ordinance to install 4-way stops at the intersection of Byard and Hillendale Road and McFarland and Hillendale Roads. So after this ordinance is adopted, within a couple days, there will be stop signs put up. So those two intersections will become four-way stops. For approximately 30 days, there'll be flashing red lights on the stop signs and warning signs ahead so that everybody can get used to them being four-way stops. This was done, there was a 2009 study done by Pannoni and Associates that supported this decision due to crash data. We did have our current engineer do another study, and it did support that we turn these intersections into four-way stops.
Right, so that, yeah, I mean, this has been,
It's been going on
so
a
I'll
long
wait,
time.
before I can say anything, I have to make a motion.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you.
Sorry.
What were the two locations again, Lisa?
Bayard and Hillendale,
Okay.
McFarland and Hillendale.
So I would so move.
Second. Any discussion? Yes.
Just as a mother of young drivers, who I know have a tendency to go too fast down Hillendale.
Yeah. As a mother of young
As a
drivers.
mother of young and pending drivers, I'm really happy that you're doing this to keep the speeds down on Hillendale, because it gets pretty speedy there from time to time. You know, I've been known to fly down the road there as well, but I think it's good, and it'll help keep everybody safe, so thank you.
Just so before you give up the microphone, would you tell us who you are, please?
I'm sorry, I'm Whitney Hoffman. Hi, I'm a Kennett Township resident, and you may have seen my obnoxious signs out because I just finished running for state representative.
Thank you.
I also wanted to point out that prior to us doing this, we did cut down the trees on a property at the corner of Bayard and Hillendale to improve the sight distance. And then we'll be replanting trees, setting them back a lot further on that property, but it has improved it tremendously.
If I might comment to the board, and I don't want to contradict you, yes, they work as speed enforcement, but you cannot install four-way stops for speed enforcement. This is done just for sight distance and the crash data that is there.
Thank you, Chief. Anybody else want to comment? Yes, John.
Could the chief review the rules of the road at a four-way stop?
Generally speaking, at a four-way stop, the first one into the intersection has the right-of-way, but generally speaking, at four-way stops, cars do very nicely alternate. And the example is, I do have a training in traffic engineering studies, which have to be done. I've been looking for this since '09. I got Pannoni Associates to do the study on a grant, and we did everything we can do in order to avoid accidents there, but nothing seemed to work. Cutting the bank down worked, but talking to the property owners there, they wanted to see, they yielded cutting the bank because they did not want to. And we told them that after we cut the bank, there will be a four-way stop coming because of the configuration of the road. That intersection sits right on a curve. And the four-way stops at Rosedale and McFarland, where there were serious and numerous accidents, have been very effective.
Thank you again, Chief. Any other hands? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
As am I, so this passes unanimously. Bill, before we get off the subject that you had brought up, which was the history of how transactions occur in the township, I don't know anything about, other than what you told us tonight, how in the past that has worked. What normally happens is that an ordinance is proposed. Normally, we would direct the legal counsel to draft one, and it would be presented, it would be advertised, and then we would, over a period of time, it would come up and be voted on. But there is no presumption that there will be a period, then a month period, and another vote later on. none of that is recorded in the records that I'm aware of.
But that is happening. Like, for example, the retirement ordinance was discussed for months prior to being adopted, and almost every ordinance is discussed. We authorize our attorney to draft the ordinance, we then post it on the website, and it's usually a month or two before it's adopted. The Planning Commission one was only placed on the website 3 weeks ago, but it was up there, but it generally, things are postponed a month or so before they're adopted.
To answer, you've been associated as a supervisor for 2 years. This is a number of years beyond that, and I think our township manager is very familiar with when that request to have a presentation and an adoption was brought up. It was a number of years ago. I didn't know that the ordinance to reduce the number of supervisors on the Planning Commission was advertised.
Oh, yes.
Was it all in detail about what was in this tonight?
You don't put the entire ordinance in, you put a summary, and then you note in there that it's available on the website and in the township office.
When did it go on the website?
It's been on the website since January 8th, I believe.
That's correct. Okay, fine. So that's 8 days. Today's the 19th. It's only been
21st.
21st. Okay. So it hasn't been on even a month. So
I said that.
no. So that was we've already looked at the number of days from the time it was presented on the website. Okay.
And this is his 4th year.
It's already decided. You're going to have it at the next. You're going to review it and perhaps adopt it at the next official meeting, which takes place. Are you considering the work session?
Yes, it's a public meeting.
Why does the agenda still call it a work session?
That's a good question.
I'll change that.
Well, I think you ought to, because the work session usually connotes that it's a discussion period, not an official
I believe
meeting.
it says work session, public meeting, but
Yeah,
I
okay.
can change that.
Okay, good.
It does start at 7 o'clock
Yeah.
versus 7:30.
Yes. That's important to note. Thank you, Rich. Work session begins at 7. Board of Supervisors meeting begins at 7:30. Okay, that gets us through four-way stops, and we now, oh my goodness, resolution for Chandlier Mill Bridge. You want to introduce that for us, please?
Sure. This is Resolution 2015-8. It's a resolution of the Board of Supervisors of Kennett Township limiting the use of the Chandlier Mill Bridge to pedestrians, pedal bicycles, and emergency vehicles weighing up to and including 20 tons, and directing that all actions required to restrict the Chandlier Mill Bridge to those uses be taken. I can read a little bit more of the resolution so everybody has the history here.
Actually,
Or do you want me to?
yes, I do, because I think that the wherefore clauses are important, and you ought to read the whole thing, please.
So hold on.
People have been holding their breath for 2.5 or 3 years, 3 or 4 years, so it may as well have the whole thing on the table.
Okay. Whereas the Chandlier Mill Bridge is located at the threshold of the largest contiguous land conservation and historic preservation area in Kennett Township, with over 500 acres of open space and 14 historic sites identified, including 2 National Register sites. Whereas over $11 million in current dollars has been invested to date by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Chester County, and Kennett Township and private funders in surrounding open space, historic preservation, and trail creation. Whereas the Chandlier Mill Bridge is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Whereas the Kennett Township Historical Commission has designated the Chandler Mill Bridge as a contributing resource within the planned west branch of the Red Clay Creek Historic District. Whereas the Chandler Mill Bridge is an integral part of public living history hikes led by architectural historian Jane Dorchester, which includes the bridge and the adjacent historic mill race, the Gregg House, remnants of Timbuktu and Freeman villages with ties to the Underground Railroad. Whereas the UAME Church, as owners of the nearby Bucktoe Cemetery, a living classroom educating local youth about the African American soldiers who served their country during the Civil War, supports the pedestrian-only option through their outreach and inclusion on the Living History Hike. Whereas the Chandler Mill Bridge is part of the Chester County Planning Commission's recommended bikeway network and currently is a popular thoroughfare for cycling groups and recreational bikers. Whereas the Chandler Mill Bridge is a key component in the western portion of the Red Clay Greenway, a developing 10 to 12 mile trail corridor connecting the borough of Kennett and other community assets to create a contiguous walking, jogging, biking, and recreational thoroughfare for the benefit of Kennett residents and the surrounding communities. Whereas the adaptive reuse of the historic Chandler Mill Bridge as a pedestrian-only bridge with emergency access will be the keystone of the Chandler Mill Nature Preserve and its attendant interpretive nature center with vital trail linkages to the Red Clay Greenway. Whereas through the leadership of Kennett Township in collaboration with the Brokaw family, the Mills family, and other local landowners, it is anticipated that additional grants and easements shall be forthcoming to supplement the Chandler Mill Nature Preserve. Whereas through the leadership of Kennett Township, the Kennett Township in collaboration with the Brokaw family, the Mills family, and other local landowners, the Land Conservancy for Southern Chester County, the Chandler Mill Bridge Consortium, the Kennett Trails Alliance, the Kennett Trails and Sidewalk Committee, the UAME Church, the Delaware Nature Society, the Wilmington Trails Club, and various local environmental, education, recreation, and historic groups, the bridge and the attendant Chandler Mill Nature Preserve with trails and interpretive center will flourish as a vital, historic, biodiverse, educational, passive, recreational asset for the benefit of Kennett Township, Kennett residents, and the surrounding community for generations to come. Whereas the goal of preserving the historic bridge as a pedestrian-only thoroughfare with emergency vehicle access is to create a nature preserve to protect the valuable habitats and the flora and fauna in their natural state, and to provide a haven for the public for nature study and observation and other passive recreational activities. Whereas on November 5, 2014, the Board of Supervisors of Kennett Township passed a motion authorizing the appropriate township officers and officials to take all actions necessary to obtain fee ownership of the Chandler Mill Bridge, located in Kennett Township from Chester County, with the intention of maintaining the bridge's historic nature. Whereas by Resolution 60-14, dated December 8, 2014, the Chester County Board of Commissioners expressed its intention to transfer fee ownership of the Chandler Mill Bridge, County Bridge number 236, to Kennett Township. Whereas the Board of Supervisors deems it to be in the best interest of the health, safety, and general welfare of the residents of Kennett Township and the general public to limit the use of Chandler Mill Bridge to pedestrians, pedal bicycles, and emergency vehicles weighing up to and including 20 tons, in order to protect the historic nature of the Chandler Mill Bridge, to allow for the aforesaid preservation uses of the surrounding area, and to provide passage for emergency vehicles to serve residents living in proximity to the Chandler Mill Bridge. Now, therefore, be it, and it's hereby resolved by the Board of Supervisors of Kennett Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania, and it's hereby adopted and resolved by authority of the same as follows. The Board of Supervisors of Kennett Township hereby limits the use of the Chandler Mill Bridge to pedestrians, pedal bicycles, and emergency vehicles weighing up to and including 20 tons. Upon obtaining fee ownership of the Chandler Mill Bridge, all township officers and officials shall take all action necessary to restrict the use of the Chandler Mill Bridge to the above stated uses, including but not limited to erection of appropriate signage and erection of breakaway or removable bollards or other devices to prevent vehicular traffic from using the bridge, but to allow qualifying emergency vehicles to pass.
Is there a motion on the floor?
I'd like to so move.
And I will second it. Before, do you want to make comments now, or do you want to make...
Do you have some comments?
I have some comments.
Why
I'm
don't
not
you go
ready.
ahead? Are you not ready?
I'm not ready to do them yet.
Okay.
Anybody have any comments they want to make? Mr. Gutman.
Yes, I'm Michael Gutman. Thank you for identifying.
Can you get the microphone, please, Mike? I can hardly hear you. Sound gets lost in this room, particularly when it's full of people.
I'm delighted with this motion.
Thank you.
I'm John Wilkins, the Township President. I think this is an awesome way to preserve something for generations and give people and all those in the surrounding areas here something that is an invaluable part of the way of life that people came here to appreciate and enjoy.
Thank you.
I said all I have to say at our last.
You have to, it's a rule.
I just got to say hooray from many of the residents that have been waiting for this decision for a very long time. It is a wonderful decision for the whole populace.
We haven't voted yet now. Thank you. Well, I haven't voted, haven't commented, so I'm going to comment now. In 2011, when I ran for office as a supervisor of Kennett Township, the question of whether to preserve the Chandlier Mill Bridge as an historic and functional structure was high on the radar of the electorate. I promised to save it. By action taken this year, the township committed to save that bridge, and we are actively in the process of taking ownership from Chester County to accomplish that goal. The question of functionality raised a new concern. In 2011, it referred to restoring the bridge to serve as a vehicular throughway. The alternative to the historic bridge was a two-lane modern bridge, a paean to enlightened PennDOT design and construction. It was a major issue during the candidacy of Richard Leff, and he was elected in part because of his commitment to restoring the bridge and his opposition to maintaining it for vehicular use. Whether to close the bridge to vehicular traffic was never addressed during my campaign in 2011. I never had to address that question, but now I do. Due to changed circumstances, the sentiment of the community morphed in 2013 into a new vision for that bridge. The road that connected to it, Chandlier Mill Road, and the natural area surrounding all of it. A local landowner made a very generous offer of money to the Land Conservancy of Southern Chester County, TLC. And another local landowner offered to sell their property to TLC, allowing TLC to form a corporate headquarters and visitor center. But completion of those offers would require the bridge to be closed to vehicular traffic. the community entered into a new and profound discussion of the meaning of functionality and the vision of that area. Individual residents weighed in on the impact of closing Chandlier Mill Bridge to vehicular traffic. Organizations, including TLC, expressed their respective concerns about the loss of the bridge for vehicular traffic. Township committees presented analysis and insight. Several public meetings were held, and the school district and emergency service providers shared their concerns and experiences. Professionals, including the township engineers, evaluated the impact of such a closing upon the community welfare. A review of traffic studies performed over several years suggested that the bulk of users of the bridge were employees commuting to and from mushroom farms at the northern end of Chandlier Road. They were not involved in traveling in the morning and evening rush hours and did not impact on traffic following Round Hill Road and exiting onto Kaolan Road. Further, they had successfully resolved a new traffic pattern that did not involve Chandlier Mill Road. This insight, generated by Kennett police personnel, also explained how the previous traffic patterns were consistent with Round Hill Road usage currently measured. After many years of bridge closure, it appears as if the previous traffic patterns had, in fact, settled into a new and stable traffic pattern. That left infrastructure issues. The closure of other roads or bridges in that immediate area could be problematic. If either Hillendale Bridge or Kaolan Bridge failed, or either of those roads were impassable, Chandlier Mill Road could be cut off. But this is a problem that threatens all the roads and bridges of the township and of the greater area, if you listened to the president last night. For instance, this same concern currently impacts residents in the Burnt Mill Road area of the township as well. I know of no way to eliminate this concern other than to use proper vigilance and maintenance regarding the condition of our transportation infrastructure. Nor do I believe that a hypothetical threat of a possible but not probable infrastructure failure should stop careful planning for the transportation needs of the community. We should build our dreams and live our plans, so long as we also exercise due diligence and care in the process. This Board of Supervisors is committed to performing its duties in such a responsible and careful manner. Ultimately, I was convinced that the bridge needed to stay open for emergency vehicles under all circumstances. But whether to close the bridge to vehicular traffic remained the pressing question. To gain clarity on the issues, I entered into discussions with various Chandlier Mill Road residents as to the impact of closing the road to vehicular traffic. From one resident in particular, Tom Brokaw, who sits in the back, I learned of his long-range vision for the area bounded by Chandlier Mill Road, the western border of Kennett Township, and from Hillendale south to the bridge, commonly known as Bucktoe Preserve. That vision, subject to family needs and relevant tax laws, contemplates a conservation zone that will cover both Kennett Township and New Garden Township, privately amassed and maintained. It was clear that we shared a common vision for the betterment of the township. Tom's present and future donative intention included the following: donate approximately 45 acres contiguous to Chandlier Mill Bridge to the Land Conservancy for Southern Chester County, for the perpetual enjoyment of the general public, subject only to the Trust's, TLC's, care, stewardship, and oversight thereof. Grant trail easements to TLC along the perimeter of the Brokaw's property, provide supervised trail connections to the Bucktoe Creek Preserve, and give the Red Clay Greenway Trail System public access linkages. Contribute the amount of $100,000 to the use of Kennett Township to fund the maintenance of the Chandlier Mill Bridge, and contribute an amount up to $100,000 to TLC toward the purchase of contiguous real estate for the purpose of a corporate headquarters and visitor center. Tom assured me that he would continue to work with Kennett Township and the TLC to preserve other of his lands in Kennett Township, and he would encourage the collaboration of other owners of properties both within Kennett Township and in adjacent municipalities, that means New Garden, to adopt a like program of land conservation for preservation, research, education, and public access for the community benefit. Guided by this thoughtful and generous vision by Tom and his family, and in conjunction with Kennett Township, we share the goal to jointly pursue an ongoing effort to shape a significant natural and environmental resource that will serve the community in perpetuity. The question remains, how should the township define functionality? Whether the township should close Chandlier Mill Bridge to vehicular traffic. While that would inconvenience some, the traffic studies and analysis of usage strongly suggests that it is a very small number actually impacted, and that impact is actually de minimis. With the commitment to keep the bridge open for emergency services as needed, and with the vision of a conservation zone, including the important historical area of Bucktoe, I now resolved to the closing of the bridge, except for pedestrian and pedal bicycle use and emergency use as necessary. I therefore will vote in support of the resolution. Does anybody else have anything he or she would like to add?
I would,
Oh, it's something.
a little bit. It's okay. Do you want to go?
Go ahead.
Do you want?
Susan Singer?
Sure, the microphone in there.
Here it comes. There you go.
Susan Singer, I'm a township resident. I use Chandlier Mill Road. With it closed, all the traffic now goes on Hillendale to Kalen Road, which makes 5 Points terrible to try to get through or come home from Delaware. It sounds to me like, and maybe this isn't the way I should be saying this, but that with all these people with all this extra money are bribing the township to keep the bridge closed for vehicular traffic. That's basically what they're doing. They're using their influence with their money to close it. And I don't know what traffic studies or when they were done to say that there had the number of traffic going down Chandlier Mill Road, since the bridge has been closed as long as it has. I think it should stay open for vehicular traffic, even if it's one lane like it was before, one way going back and forth, one like Hillendale Bridge is. And like you said, if something happens to Hillendale Bridge or Kalen Road Bridge, it's going to be a major traffic problem.
Thank you.
Not that it makes any difference, because I know you already made up your mind.
So, just to clarify a few things, when I was running for supervisor, I really didn't know how I'd be getting to today. I started off learning that they were going to tear down the bridge and spend $2 million of Federal Highway Trust Fund money. And if you haven't been paying attention, that fund is bankrupt and has been for the last 2 years, bailed out with general taxpayer funds because we've refused as a nation to raise the federal income tax on gasoline to fund it properly. And that's because some people want to push the decisions of roads and bridges from the federal to the state and to the local level. Especially if there's not money in that fund, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to spend $2 million to tear down an old bridge, put in a new one on a road that, although some people use it, wasn't that highly used beforehand. I later went on to learn that it wasn't $2 million, it was $3 million when you include all the costs involved. What I did want to do was to preserve that bridge, make the best use of it, and I didn't know if I would be in support of closing it to regular vehicle traffic or not. Since I've been elected, besides the other things that I've discussed, we've weighed out a lot of pros and cons of the options. We've gone through, I think, at least 6 and variations thereof of the options. We've had numerous discussions with our township engineers and also weighed the pros and cons and heard from a lot of the public at public meetings, but then also when people see me out around township. I'm sure the same has happened to other supervisors. So I came into this with the idea of preserving the bridge and making wise use of the public's money, be it federal money or state money or local money. And I think we've spent a lot of time weighing those options. There are pros and cons to all the options. And I think we're at a point now where we can say that we've heard from the public about all those options, and I appreciate your input.
Any other comments? Please, Tom.
Just a couple of footnotes. I'm going to do an analogy of dropping a pebble in a pond. Recently, I was doing some work in Newcastle County and looked at a Google Earth aerial of the Hockessin area and its relationship to the Pennsylvania-Delaware line in Kennett Township. And if you look at that and you see the significant growth in Newcastle County, what you find is that this is an important sweet spot that's a transition area from a lot of intensive growth there and southern Chester County. Last year, by being appointed as the Township Landscape Architect, I had the privilege to also work with the LCAC and the Trails and Sidewalk Committee. And from a really big picture standpoint, whether you think about the whole circuit of trails throughout the township in a continuous loop, or the discoveries that we made with the mapping for LCAC of where we thought were the most significant heritage landscapes. Without even knowing about this initiative, our independent mapping had the south central and southwestern portions of the township being the place where the cumulative resource mapping, all that's shown on these walls and other maps, ratified the importance of the area, so that while there may be some of the inconveniences that were referenced, from the really big picture standpoint, this is a very important link to much broader environmental planning issues in the township. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. I would like to comment briefly to what you said. Nobody is bribing the township. And the reality is, from my perspective, is that, following up on what Tom was just talking about, this is a very important historical, natural, and environmental area to the township and to the region. And that region is interstate. The question is a balance of how to meet the needs of the residents of the township, given multiple choices. And, you know, in reality, we're very blessed that we have those choices. And we have those choices because of the generosity of various members of the community who have made contribution. Now, there will be inconveniences to, as it already has been going on for several years, for driving on Chandlier Mill Road. And if you live on Chandlier Mill Road, it's a problem to get out in some ways. We looked at the records that were run, traffic records that were run before the bridge was closed, when it was used in the normal course of business. And then we looked at the traffic as it exited out of the area now. And as I said in my prepared statement, the usage was predominantly workers going up to the mushroom homes. Some of them weren't, but the vast majority of them in a day were going up to the mushroom home and coming back. So each of those drivers was making a double and was registered twice. And when you factor out those cars, because they found other ways to get where they're going, and you look at the numbers that are going out through Round Hill, those numbers correspond. And so it made it very clear in looking at this, and it was done by the safety committee and it was done by the police department, who have an experience in dealing with these things. Now, it certainly does create a complication if one is going to use Hillendale and Keowen. That's true, but Keowen and Hillendale is a problem irrespective of the couple hundred trips that may be added into it because of coming up out of Chandlier Mill over a period of time. It's problematic anyway, and that needs to be addressed. There are lots of things that are going to need to be addressed, and we're going to do it. Now, those are state roads, so it makes it more difficult to deal with them, but we're going to deal with them. But balancing that off against the historic space, the environmental space, and the streams that are so vital, trying to keep them pristine, and the multi-municipal services that will be provided here because of the walking trails that come down from the borough and beyond and go down across the lower part of the township and down into Delaware and are going to continue on through other parts of this township. When you weigh that against it, it's a choice. What does this township want? And we have spent years trying to get a clear answer to that. And my sense of it is, I won't speak for the other members of the board, my sense of it is that this is an opportunity that we should take, and we will value it for a long, long time. So, anybody else have anything to add? Council?
I'm Timothy Barnard. I'm not a resident of the township. I have represented the Brokaw family for years, and assisting them in the handling of their land and its protection. For an equal number of years, I've worked with the Land Conservancy and on a part-time basis, assisting them in their work. It was not my intention to say anything at this time, but I think it's just a good idea to just highlight a couple of matters. This is a rather impressive decision that is before the Board of Supervisors, and rather a delight to me and my clients to see it reach this moment. For years, the Brokaws, in their very quiet, introspective way, have done what they can do for the protection of land in this area and the pursuit of protecting the environment. They haven't sought any attention for it. They've accomplished an enormous deal of land protection in the area in which they live. They've done it, though not, and nor do they seek at this time, the assistance of the township to protect their interests. They've done that themselves. And they've done that not only for their own benefit, but for the benefit of the community around them. And so they've turned to encourage the township to this action, once again, not for something that's going to specifically benefit them, but in fact will, by reason of their commitments, obligate them to meet certain commitments to the community, to open some of the trails that will extend the red clay greenway trail system and allow a greater use of it. Use that up until this time has been largely restricted to people pursuing science and nature study in limited fashion. So this is a very unselfish decision on their part to assist the township. And in a fashion, they are sort of making it a general challenge to the community to say that we as a community can make a difference if we work with the township to see that land is open for greater use, for greater opportunity, in a community that is now realizing that motor vehicles aren't the only way to get exercise, that there are opportunities around us. And so it's their hope, my hope, the Nature Conservancy's hope, that the community will realize that this isn't the Brokaws venture, it isn't TLC's venture, it is nobly led by the township, but it's the community's venture. And it's our hope to see that if this resolution is passed, that others will step up and see what they can do, will realize the township is incurring some cost in trying to protect and preserve that bridge, and see what they can do to help.
Thank you, Jim. Chief, up here.
Yeah, I'm Chris Robinson. I'm a resident of New Garden Township.
Can you speak up?
Chris Robinson,
Thank you.
a resident of New Garden Township. I know the Chandlier Mill group. I just want to applaud the board and all the folks who have brought this to fruition. I'm part of the Historical Commission from New Garden Township, and it was a 10-year effort to save the bridge in Annenberg. And people are very happy with that result. And I'm also involved with the trails in New Garden, and look forward to this kind of attraction of center of a trail system between the two municipalities. So I really applaud the board's effort and numerous folks of all contributions to make this happen. So I wanted to make sure that coming from another township is very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Then we gotta get on the vote. All in favor? I'm in favor.
I'm in favor.
Passes. Thank you. Thank you. That gets us to new business. May we have a motion to pay the bills, please?
That would be a good idea. I'd move that we pay the bills.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. May we have a motion to accept the agreements with our two fire companies for fire and emergency services to residents of the township for 2015. Do you need to do anything with that?
I could give a brief explanation of them.
Yes, please.
So annually, the township has to renew the fire company agreements with Longwood Fire Company and Kennett Fire Company. So the agreement with Longwood Fire Company in the township will run until January 21st, 2016. It states that the township will pay a sum of $160,000 in quarterly installments to the fire company. The township also, it states in here, the township paid an additional contribution of $650,000 in 2014 for the purchase of a fire truck. Therefore, that is in lieu of a capital contribution until the end of 2018. This agreement also states that Longwood Fire Company will respond to all fire vehicle accident calls in the response area of the township, which is the area east of the center of Byard Road and north of the center of Old Kennett Road, and the Route 1 southbound corridor from Schoolhouse Road to Route 82, and to assist Kennett Fire Company number 1 on fire and rescue calls in their area. Longwood Fire Company will service the designated territory above for all ALS and BLS calls. Longwood Fire Company will also provide ALS coverage for the remainder of the township, with Kennett Fire Company transporting. The Route 1 corridor will be served by Kennett Fire Company with mutual aid from Avondale Rescue. Just give me 1 minute so I can read the rest of the contract. For Kennett Fire Company, again, this contract will end January 21st, 2016. The township will contribute $160,000 in quarterly installments. The township will also give Kennett Fire Company $650,000 in 2000. The township will also give Kennett Fire Company $650,000 in 2015 for a fire truck in lieu of a contribution for capital for the next 5 years ending in 2019. The response area for Kennett Fire Company is west of the center of Byard Road and north of the center of Old Kennett Road, including the Route 1 corridor, northbound lane from Route 82 to Schoolhouse Road, and to assist Longwood Fire Company on fire and rescue calls in their area. Kennett Fire Company will also serve their area for BLS calls and transport for ALS calls. That's it.
Marla?
I apologize, I didn't realize that this item was going to be on the agenda tonight. I didn't realize that this item was going to be on the...
Chief, can you get the microphone? Sorry. Thanks.
I didn't realize that this item was going to be on the agenda tonight, so I didn't anticipate speaking about it. But in view of the fact that you're renewing these contracts with both companies, I think you can imagine what my next question will be, which is this an opportunity for you to limit the ability of Kennett Fire Company to double bill people for ambulance service? So this, I don't think most of the people sitting here realize that if they make a 911 call, for instance, for a cardiac event, that call will be responded to by both Kennett and Longwood, because only Longwood can provide advanced life support. And that both ambulances, even though the person rides in one ambulance to the hospital, the person will get a bill for 2 ambulances because of the requirement that the person who placed the 911 call and is having the emergency be transported in a Kennett ambulance.
Thank you for, have you finished? Okay.
For the time being.
I would never try to preclude you from speaking. You raise a very important issue, as one that I only recently learned about. And we've had some discussions with both fire chiefs, and learned that if we were to only use Longwood, that would probably mean the end of emergency services from Kennett. Trying to find a solution to the problem you've described has not been easy and has not been forthcoming. And it's a problem that's been going on for some considerable period of time. What we are doing at this point is Kennett Township, in concert with Pennsbury, East Marlboro, Newland, the borough, probably not New Garden, because they're not impacted by this at all. I think that's the list of them. We've all gathered together under the auspices of the Kennett Area Regional Planning Commission. Sorry that Father Bill left, because for a considerable period of time, Bill was very actively involved with the Kennett Area Regional Planning Commission. We are going to use a consultant to address the broader picture of fire and emergency services in the regions, and that would include both Longwood and Kennett Fire Company. And the overflow is to other fire companies as well, whether Avondale or those that are up in the East Marlboro area. Trying to define how best to pay for these services and how best to efficiently provide those services. That's going to take a little bit of time. And so what we are opting to do, because we as a township are legally charged to provide fire service and emergency service to the residents of the township. So we, at this point, are kind of, how you say, in short pants. We have to do something now to make sure that we have coverage in place. But we are at the same time entering into a serious negotiation and investigation and the larger picture of what is being done, how it's being done, and how it's being paid for, expected to be paid for. So what I'm trying to do is acknowledge the issue that you raise and try to explain to you what we are doing that will go down the road into the future, even though we're pretty much bound, from my perspective, to making a commitment. I mean, otherwise we call up Avondale and make a contract with them. That will create some other problems, such as if we have a fire over at this end of town, it would be a long time before the fire truck gets here. So we have some real hard issues, and we don't have much room when it comes to our legal responsibility. So that's why we're doing what we're doing, but what we're going to do in addition to that. Does that help at all? Doesn't answer your question, I know.
Yeah, because right now I feel that I'm solely addressing the issue of ambulance service, and I think that the township residents are adequately met by Longwood, because that company offers paramedic who can provide advanced life support and transportation to the hospital. And I think that at a minimum, the township residents should be advised publicly that right now, certain township residents will be double billed for 2 ambulance rides if they live in a certain area, and they should know that ahead of time. Because then maybe, when they're in that position and they have 2 ambulances in their driveway, they can say, I want one of you to leave, because I don't want 2 bills.
Yes, and one of the things that we talked about doing, and I don't know if this happened yet or not, but I expect that it will, is to send out a letter to the community to advise exactly that situation. Has that gone out yet?
Not yet. We're going to. We haven't yet.
Okay. So that's in the process of being done. Okay.
And I just want to also say that I think that it's unfair to expect the residents to finance an ambulance in this manner. That requiring this. I don't see how it makes sense to require residents to pay 2 bills just to finance Kennett Township's ambulance company. I don't understand that.
I don't think that we are doing that. We have a contract with Kennett Fire for these services, and we have a contract with Longwood Fire, and we pay for those. We pay for those services. If you use an emergency service, the township is meeting its obligation to have a relationship that you can call on. That's what our responsibility is, and it is a problem that you did not know that you could perhaps be double billed. I didn't know that was happening either until December, because I had no feedback telling me that. And as I say, we're in the process of addressing that in various ways, including communicating with the residents so that they are aware of this problem, and looking for a solution. Sorry. And looking for a solution to disarm this problem for the future, but I don't have that solution yet.
I wanted to point out something else that came out of the meeting. I think I discussed this with you. One of the other concerns with not having both of them when there's an emergency call was the timing. Because it was pointed out to the supervisors that if somebody has a call, and since Longwood could be way on the other side of the township, if at least one ambulance gets there first and can assist in some way to help save somebody's life until Longwood gets there, that's a benefit to the residents. I understand your concern with the billing. I live in the same territory you do. But that was a concern that was pointed out, that at least having an ambulance there quickly might save somebody's life.
Although Kennett can't provide advanced life support.
No, but they explained to the supervisors, yeah, they can do shock and they can do other things while waiting for the advanced life support to get there.
That doesn't satisfy me.
You're done? Relinquish the mic.
Hi, Whitney Hoffman again, Kennett Township. We have a brand-new state representative, Steve Barr, who's very involved with emergency services, and he's been doing great work with all of that. He was here actually having a meeting about whether or not people would have to pay up to $1,000 if you hadn't made a donation to your volunteer fire department, if you got services to help cover the different costs, and what would happen. You know, the questions are still open about what would happen if you got 2 people to come, and would you each owe them up to $1,000, etc. So I think another way to address this is somehow with the regional coordination is on the state issue, and I would urge you to contact Mr. Barr about that, and I'm sure he would love to help you.
We'll see you tomorrow.
We're meeting with them tomorrow, so we'll remember to raise that question. Thank you for the suggestion. Was there a hand I saw over on this side? Any other hands?
Mr. Chairman, if I can just
Yes, Chief.
agree that you took the action you took in this sense. We need a certain amount of ambulances and medic units, and this really came to my attention during the Red Clay house fire, because the ambulances were all tied up, and I had to wait for one out of Westchester, and I understand they're on standby somewhere, but that seemed like eternity. Even though I have skills over first aid as required for policemen, that still seemed like eternity. And so I'm glad you're proceeding this way, even though it's not happy for you, because we need a certain amount of emergency response available for this township, because it's grown in that area so much. So a resolution on this issue is going to take a while. So we need to move forward and not cut an ambulance, because each ambulance needs to be available.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Calling for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're voting on both contracts,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
Okay. On that resolution for both contracts, the answer is adopted. Okay. Roadwork, may we have the current activities, please?
Drainage job on Fairville Road was done to help with the ponding after rain at the intersection of Spring Mill Road. This was a safety issue with freezing temperatures coming.
I wondered who did that.
Yeah.
Is it you or the state? 'Cause
It was township.
Oh,
We asked the state to do something about the ponding there, but they didn't. The road crew is working with Kendall, upgrading the red light at Kendall Drive and Route 1. As I stated earlier, they're going to use some of the existing poles and red light heads and controllers if compatible. Installed many new signs around the township. The wooden posts are being pulled and replaced with the new standard street sign. Many of the old posts are given to the residents on a first-come basis. Potholes?
We don't have any control on how those signs look.
No,
Ones that are
we do
up
not.
there now.
They're standard. Potholes and shoulder edges were repaired with cold patch and stones where needed. 4 new 9-foot 6-inch clearance signs were added at the railroad underpass on East Hillendale Road after another truck tried to move the bridge and lost in the hope that these signs will get their attention. A new pickup truck that was ordered was delivered. It's a Ford F-250 4-door, 4-wheel drive with a plow. And it will seat up to 6 people. We did add a 6th road crew member in December, who unfortunately broke his ankle last week during the ice. So this is his first month of work. Several small snowstorms and very cold temperatures have made for lots of salting trips around the township. These types of storms use more material than big storms. Sometimes 3 trips of salting in a day is required. They are replacing salt as soon as they use it to make sure they don't run short if a big storm comes. On January 8th, there was a house fire at Fallbrook on a subdivision off of Old Kennett Road due to the cold temperatures. Severe icing occurred, and the tank trucks had to shuttle water. The road crew helped in any way they could by salting the route the tank trucks ran, and they closed the roads to allow for easier access. Tree trimming is underway between storms and holidays. Roads that will have work done on them this summer, along with subdivisions where safety needs are addressed. Stormwater management is being started with the new MS4 outfalls being mapped, and a new program on basin management is being set up. I wanted to add one thing to this. The fire that occurred January 8th, not only should the fire companies be commended, but so should the road crew and Chief McCarthy They helped the fire company during the entire time, keeping the area salted, because from what I Bruce and Steve, you guys could comment better, but from what I understand, as soon as they were putting water on the fire, everything was freezing on the ground. And so all three groups should be commended for a very good job they did out there.
On that point, Lisa, I wanted to tell the residents that I had a phone call on the day of that fire, I had a phone call from the chief of the fire company, Kennett Fire Company, who wanted to speak to me directly to convey the appreciation of the fire company of the work that both the police department and the road crew did to facilitate the work that the fire people were doing. So the fire company wanted me to pass that on. I want to do that publicly here tonight. There are no escrow releases?
No.
Okay. No subdivision extensions. That gets us through our agenda. That opens it up to any more public comment about anything. Chief. Thank you.
Long day.
I'm John Haydick again. Today I attended a partnership meeting. This is the Brandywine Valley Scenic Byway. This partnership is the Delaware management entity for the National Scenic Byway, which involves the Kennett Pike and Route 100. Just a couple of, this is a very brief report for the board. I would characterize that Delaware is about 5 years ahead of where we are in Pennsylvania, just because of when they started on their scenic byway effort. But there's two things that I think are important to Kennett Township. One is they have a strong committee looking at the Brandywine Valley and Red Clay Valley scenic byways, but there's no involvement from Pennsylvania. They also have a regional trail effort that seems to be doing much of the same as what we're doing. And whether we're involved in that or not, I do not know, but there's good fertile ground there for cooperation between the two states. One other thing which may impact our sign ordinance consideration. Delaware is reviewing, they set up a design guidelines committee to look at signs along, well, guidelines of all kinds, along scenic byways. And that's something we haven't done. We haven't looked at the scenic byway as being any different than any other road. They looked at 5 elements: sign size, sign illumination, building height. By the way, this is interesting factoid. In Greenville, by current law, they could build a 180-foot tall building. Same in Montana. They don't think that's appropriate. They're looking for greater setbacks and further control of consistency of signage. But it seemed to me that sign size and sign illumination along the byway may be something that we want to see if we may want to think about incorporating in our ordinance. One of the sign illumination issues is they don't like backlighted signs. And interior illuminated signs, like beer, these, you often see in bars, beer signs. They're trying to restrict that kind of thing along the scenic byway. The last thing I want to report on is there has been in existence for a long time a Kennett Pike Association. And the Kennett Pike Association has traditionally had members from Pennsbury Township represented on their board. And we've asked a few times that they consider having a member from Kennett Township. And I suggested to their head of the Kennett Pike Association that they come make a presentation before this board, suggesting that. I think it would be a good idea because the Kennett Pike is a continuous entity from Route 1 all the way to downtown Wilmington. So that's just a brief update on today. I think we have some real opportunities to work with Delaware people on the scenic byways and trails. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John. Very helpful. Anybody else want to add to our collective knowledge tonight?
I did have a report. I'm sorry I got hung up on an incident
I read
before I got
it.
here. Great. But I've just looked at this, and I'm looking at the PennDOT engineering study and the traffic signal at Longwood. I'm looking at the fire, and I'm looking at all these different things, and I'm realizing that's how much the employees put in a team effort to these various things that occur. So, sorry to add that comment.
Thank you. If there's nothing else to be added, then it's time to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
I am. Good night, everybody. Thank you.